Have you ever wondered what it takes for a good person, someone kind, compassionate, and ethical, to commit acts of cruelty or even become a monster? Imagine someone you admire, someone you trust, transforming into someone you barely recognize. What if I told you that this isn't just a rare anomaly, but a pattern seen throughout history and human behavior? Today we are delving into one of the most provocative and unsettling questions about human nature. Why do good people sometimes do bad things? By the end of this video, you'll uncover the shocking mechanisms that push ordinary individuals into darkness. More importantly, we will learn how to recognize and resist these forces, with the final insight being the most critical and empowering of them all. This journey takes us deep into psychological experiments, historical events, and philosophical reflections that expose the thin line separating good from evil. But this is not just a story about others. It's a mirror that forces us to look inward and ask, what would I do in their place? Could I too be swayed by these forces? Stay with me, because what you'll discover today could fundamentally change the way you see the world and yourself. The Lucifer effect is a concept popularized by psychologist Philip Zimbardo, who conducted the infamous Stanford Prison Experiment. What he revealed was profoundly unsettling. The environment we're placed in, the roles we adopt, and the authority we obey can twist even the most virtuous individuals into perpetrators of harm. Think about it. History is filled with examples of ordinary people who committed extraordinary atrocities. The guards in Nazi concentration camps, the soldiers who carried out ethnic cleansing, or even the bystanders who stood silent as horrors unfolded. These individuals were not born evil. They were, in many cases, regular people swept up in circumstances that unleash the darkest parts of human nature. Why does this happen? The answer lies in a combination of psychological and social forces that shape behavior. The power of authority. Psychologist Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments in the 1960s showed that people would go to extreme lengths, even inflicting pain on others, when instructed by an authority figure. In his study, participants were asked to deliver electric shocks to another person, who was actually an actor pretending to feel pain. Shockingly, most participants continued administering shocks, even when they believed they were causing severe harm, simply because they were told to do so. Now, think about your own life. How often do we follow instructions without questioning them, whether from a boss, a leader, or societal norms? What would you do if someone in a position of power asked you to compromise your morals for the greater good? The danger of dehumanization. Another critical factor is dehumanization. When we strip others of their humanity, labeling them as the enemy, subhuman, or less than, it becomes easier to justify acts of cruelty. This tactic has been used time and again in propaganda, war, and even everyday conflicts. It's easier to harm someone when you no longer see them as a person. Consider the language we use today in social and political discourse. How often do we see groups of people reduced to labels or stereotypes? Reflect on how this diminishes our empathy and connection, creating an us versus them mentality. The power of social roles and group dynamics. Zimbardo's Stanford Prison Experiment vividly demonstrated how social roles influence behavior. College students were randomly assigned to be either guards or prisoners in a simulated prison environment. Within days, the guards began to exhibit abusive behavior, and the prisoners showed signs of extreme stress and submission. What was shocking was how quickly the participants lost sight of their individuality and conformed to the roles when they were given. This raises a critical question. How much of our identity is shaped by the roles society imposes on us? Are we truly free to act as individuals, or are we subconsciously playing parts dictated by the systems around us? The slippery slope to moral collapse. These forces, authority, dehumanization, and group dynamics, are not just theoretical. They are active in our daily lives, influencing the way we think, act, and perceive others. We see them in workplaces, schools, social media, and even within families. Recognizing these forces is the first step in resisting them. But what about the tipping point? The exact moment when a good person crosses the line. That moment is often subtle. It begins with small compromises, a decision to stay silent when witnessing injustice, an agreement to just follow orders this one time. Over time, these small choices accumulate, creating a slippery slope that can lead to profound moral failure. Pause for a moment and think, have you ever made a choice that went against your values because it felt easier or safer? What were the consequences? As we move forward, we'll explore how to recognize these moments before they spiral out of control. More importantly, we'll uncover how to foster resilience against these psychological forces. But first, let's confront an even deeper question. Are some people immune to the Lucifer effect? The uncomfortable answer is that none of us are entirely immune. Psychologists have long debated whether personality traits like strong empathy, self-awareness, and moral courage can serve as protective factors. While these traits may help, the truth is that under the right, or perhaps wrong, circumstances, anyone can fall prey to these forces. Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist, described this as the shadow aspect of our psyche, the darker, often repressed parts of ourselves that we are reluctant to acknowledge. Jung believed that to fully understand ourselves, we must confront this shadow and integrate it into our conscious awareness. Have you ever felt a surge of anger or envy so intense that it surprised even you? Have you ever said or done something in the heat of the moment that you later regretted deeply? These are glimpses of the shadow at work. Now, left unchecked, this shadow can grow and manifest in ways that align with the Lucifer effect, the path to resistance. But here's the hopeful part. Awareness is our greatest defense. By understanding the psychological mechanisms that lead to moral collapse, we gain the power to resist them. One of the most insidious mechanisms is moral disengagement, a concept introduced by psychologist Albert Bandura. This explains how individuals rationalize harmful behavior to avoid guilt or remorse. For example, someone might convince themselves that everyone else is doing it, or that the ends justify the means. To counteract this, we must cultivate moral vigilance, actively questioning our actions and their consequences, even when it's uncomfortable. Ask yourself, am I justifying something that deep down I know is wrong? The power of empathy and leadership. Empathy is a powerful tool against dehumanization. When we truly see others as complex, feeling individuals with hopes, fears, and dreams, it becomes much harder to harm them. This is why storytelling, art, and genuine human connection are so vital. They remind us of our shared humanity and break down the barriers that divide us. On a societal level, the leaders we choose to follow matter. History has shown that charismatic figures can either uplift or corrupt entire societies. The question is, what kind of influence do we allow into our lives? Even if we're not in positions of traditional authority, we all have influence. The question is whether we use it to promote compassion and fairness, or to perpetuate harm and division. Conclusion, the choice is ours. The battle between good and evil is not just external, it's an internal struggle we each face daily. But here's the empowering truth. Just as circumstances can lead people astray, they can also guide us toward extraordinary acts of kindness, courage, and integrity. The same mechanisms that create monsters can also create heroes. The question is, which path will you choose? So, how do we ensure we stay on the path of good? How do we cultivate the strength to resist the pull of the Lucifer effect when it arises? The answers lie ahead. In the next section, we will uncover practical strategies for recognizing and resisting the forces that lead to moral failure. These strategies have been tested by psychologists, spiritual leaders, and ordinary individuals who have faced extraordinary challenges. And remember, the final insight we will explore is the most transformative of all. A realization that could change not only the way you see others, but also how you see yourself. To resist the forces that can lead us astray, we must first understand that awareness alone is not enough. While recognizing the psychological mechanisms of the Lucifer effect is a crucial step, we need actionable strategies to counteract their influence. Let's explore these strategies, beginning with the concept of moral courage. Moral courage is the ability to act ethically and stand up for what is right, even in the face of fear, opposition, or personal loss. It is what drives someone to speak out against injustice, protect the vulnerable, or admit a mistake when it would be easier to stay silent. But moral courage is not something we are born with. It is something we cultivate through deliberate practice and reflection. Think of historical figures like Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat on a bus, sparking a civil rights movement. Or consider whistleblowers who expose corruption and wrongdoing, often at great personal cost. These individuals were not immune to fear, but they chose to act despite it. So how can we develop moral courage in our own lives? Start by identifying your core values, the principles that matter most to you. These might include honesty, compassion, fairness, or accountability. Reflect on times when you faced a moral dilemma. Did you act in alignment with these values, or did you compromise them? One practical exercise is to imagine yourself in challenging scenarios. What would you do if you witnessed bullying at work? How would you respond if pressured to follow an unethical directive? By visualizing these situations and rehearsing your response, you strengthen your ability to act decisively when the moment arises. Another essential strategy is to build strong social connections with people who share your values. Surrounding yourself with supportive and principled individuals can act as a buffer against negative influences. These relationships provide a sense of accountability and encouragement, making it easier to resist the pressures of conformity and authority. But what about when we are confronted with systems or environments that seem designed to erode our morals? This is where the concept of situational awareness becomes vital. Situational awareness involves recognizing the subtle cues and dynamics that shape behavior. For example, pay attention to group norms. What is considered acceptable or expected in a given environment? If you notice patterns of exclusion, ask yourself, is this truly right, or have I simply accepted it because everyone else has? In addition, consider the role of small actions in creating change. Often, we feel powerless in the face of systemic issues. But even small acts of resistance can make a difference. Think of the ripple effect, how one person's decision to act with integrity can inspire others to do the same. For example, in the workplace, speaking up against unethical practices might seem risky, but it can encourage others to voice their concerns as well. Similarly, choosing kindness and understanding in everyday interactions can challenge the culture of dehumanization that often permeates society. Let's also address the critical importance of self-reflection. The philosopher Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Self-reflection allows us to identify our biases, acknowledge our mistakes, and grow from them. It is not about perfection, but about progress, becoming a little better, a little more aware, with each passing day. Make it a habit to regularly ask yourself questions like, what motivated my actions today? Did I treat others with respect and empathy? Were there moments when I stayed silent, when I should have spoken up? By reflecting on these questions, you train yourself to act with greater intention and integrity. But what about the ultimate question? Can the Lucifer effect ever be completely neutralized? While the answer may depend on individual and societal factors, the key lies in fostering what psychologist Philip Zimbardo calls a heroic imagination. The heroic imagination is the mindset that allows ordinary people to take extraordinary actions in the face of moral challenges. It is the belief that you too can make a difference. That heroism is not reserved for the exceptional, but is accessible to all of us. To cultivate this mindset, Start by looking for opportunities to practice small acts of heroism. These might include standing up for someone being treated unfairly, volunteering to help those in need, or simply choosing kindness over indifference in your daily interactions. It is also helpful to study the lives of those who have exemplified heroism, from historical figures to modern-day changemakers. Their stories remind us that courage and compassion are within our reach. At this point, you might be wondering, what is the most powerful insight of all? What final realization can truly transform the way we see ourselves in the world? That answer lies in understanding the profound interconnectedness of humanity. The line between good and evil does not run between groups of people or nations. It runs through every human heart. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn once wrote, the battle line between good and evil runs through the heart of every man. This realization is both humbling and empowering. It reminds us that we are all capable of both harm and healing. But it also gives us the agency to choose. Every moment presents a new opportunity to act with integrity, to resist the pull of darkness, and to contribute to a world rooted in compassion and justice. Stay with me, because in the final part, we will dive even deeper into how these ideas can be applied to your own life. Together, we will uncover practical steps to not only resist the Lucifer effect, but to become a force for good in a world that desperately needs it. As we come to the end of this journey, let me leave you with one final challenge. Reflect on what you have learned today and ask yourself how you can apply it in your own life. How will you recognize and resist the forces that pull you away from your values? How will you contribute to a world where goodness prevails over darkness? The answers to these questions are not easy, but they are worth pursuing. Because in the end, the battle between good and evil is not fought on distant battlefields or in abstract theories. It is fought within each of us every single day. So the next time you face a moral choice, remember this: you have the power to choose. You have the power to resist, and you have the power to be a force for good in a world that desperately needs it. The question is, will you rise to the challenge,